Hello, warriors, and welcome back to our sixth and final case study for AP Comparative Government and Politics. So today what we're going to be doing is we will be talking about some of the early political history of Iran. That means today I'm really only going to take you through basically the Abbasid Caliphate. And I want to establish some general sort of demographic understandings and sort of ground our study for this unit in the background of Iran so that we understand why Iran is one of the case studies that we're looking at here today. So I hope that you all had a restful weekend, that you did something you enjoyed, that you found some moment of peace and solace. I know everything's been really kind of upended for all of you guys, but just take it one day at a time, one bite of the apple at a time, and we're gonna be okay. So today, we're properly starting our unit. Yesterday, I gave you guys the reading packet, and I also gave you the vocabulary that you need to familiarize yourself with. And I also gave you the opportunity to watch a animated film adaptation of Marjane Satrapi's excellent graphic memoir, Persepolis. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I do recommend it. First of all, I recommend the book. The graphic memoir is astounding. It's really, really great. But the movie also does a wonderful job of translating Marjane Satrapi's drawings and storytelling framework into the medium of film. And I just think it's marvelous, and you really ought to get a chance to look at it. But part of the reason why I wanted to start the unit off with that is because Satrapi's work really kind of addresses the critical issue that we're going to be talking about this unit, and that is the Iranian Revolution and the creation of the state that occurred following that. So that is where we've got to start our story today as well. And that is with this particular quotation. This was the first line of broadcast after the declaration of the new Islamic State. That is, this is the voice of Iran, the voice of the true Iran, the voice of the Islamic Republic. So the question about what makes a true nation, what makes a group of people into a country with a single polity, is a complicated one. And hopefully you understand that after the kind of the studies that we've undergone through this course. Iran is a particularly fascinating case for a number of reasons. So this photograph is from 1979, and you can probably recognize many of the hallmarks that you would normally associate with the Iranian Revolution. You can see the woman there in a dark veil. You can see this is this is Tahrir. I think it's not Tahrir. Maybe it is. I will think of the monument's name. In the center of Tehran, you can see here, this is Ayatollah Khomeini in terms of the depiction here. And first of all, I don't speak Farsi, so I am doing the best I can with the pronunciation. It's a lot more guttural than any language I have a familiarity with, so I try. But if you know better than I how to pronounce things, please let me know, and I will make my attempts to correct myself here. But my Americanized accent is going to be pretty bad, so I do apologize. But you will also notice that these gentlemen here are dressed in pretty Western gear. And this is a moment of great transition during the course of the revolution. This meeting of sort of Western thought that a lot of people in Tehran and throughout Iran were exposed to, and the connection of that to a modern Islamic state. The question is, can you be modern and fundamentalist? And I would make the argument that yes, you can, because fundamentalism is all about trying to solve problems in the here and now. And so I'm going to ask you to remind yourself, when we talked about Nigeria, kind of what fundamentalism looks like, and then think about it in the context of Iran. So why do we look at this particular case study? Why not Saudi Arabia? Why not Qatar? Why not a million other states? Like, why Iran? Well, first of all, Iran is the only theocratic republic in the world. Um, it has a particularly fascinating political and governmental system that is pretty confusing, I won't lie, but it is a good way of kind of looking at something that is radically different from other types of governments we have already studied. So it's very different from everything else that we've talked about, which is why I've put it at the end of the course rather than folding it in all the way through. It is a theocracy in that the foundational text for the country, the foundational moment for law, is theocratic. It is coming through the lens of religion, but it does have democratic elements. This is going to be an illiberal democracy, as we will see. Their elections are not free, fair, and transparent for a number of different reasons, but they do hold elections, but those elections are heavily filtered. So this is a good one to compare against places like, say, Russia, in terms of the ways that illiberal democratic systems can look. It is particularly unique among Middle Eastern countries because Iran, unlike Saudi Arabia, unlike Egypt, is not Sunni in terms of its affiliation. It is Shiite. The majority population is Shiite. And we're going to get into the specifics of what that means later on today, just in case you have conveniently forgotten all of your AP World History. So I am going to kind of go back over that because it's critically important that you understand here. Iran is also a really good case study for us to look at and to compare the ideas of sort of traditional values versus secular values versus values of modernization. If you remember the Engelhardt-Wetzel scale of world values surveys, Iran is very traditional in terms of its beliefs and values. But at least up until just recently, when things kind of fell off a ledge, Iran had also been very concerned with a lot of fairly modern ideas. So it's this really strange, from an American point of view, a strange combination of traditional and modern. Oh, let me go back really quickly. The gentleman there that you see to your right, to your right, is Hassan Rouhani, the current president of Iran. We'll talk about how much power he really has later on, but you will notice from his garb that he is a cleric. He has a religious background. He is also a democratically elected politician here. So we have kind of this marriage between religion and politics, united in the form of the president, currently at least. Now, let us talk about where Iran is. Okay, that's it. There you go. That's Iran. More than that. You'll notice that it's bordered to its west. I can't direction, my apologies. It's bordered to its west by Iraq. Iraq is also majority Shiite in terms of its population, but for much of the 1980s, up until the early 2000s, Iraq was of course ruled by Saddam Hussein, and he and his ruling coalition around him were Sunni. So the Sunni minority was in charge over a Shiite population. Iraq and Iran do not get along very well. Don't know if you know this, but they went to war. It was really bloody. They're not over it yet. Persia is, of course, on the Persian Gulf. That sets it up for a lot of trade and or conflict with other Gulf states. Iran also is right here by the Strait of Hormuz. So any oil tankers or anything like that coming out of Kuwait or coming out of Qatar or coming out of Saudi Arabia or coming out of the UAE are going to go straight through the Strait of Hormuz, which is directly under Iranian control most of the time. This is where we get into trouble, where you have oil tankers being seized and things like that. To the north, Iran is bordered by Azerbaijan up here. This is Turkey. Pay attention to that because we have Kurds right here. And yeah, Azerbaijan is here, and then it's over here, somewhere like that. Yeah. And they're bordered by the Caspian Sea. Now, if you go north across the Caspian Sea, you run into the Russian Federation. This makes the Russian Federation a strong trade ally of Iran, which is critically important for you to understand why Iran and Russia are constantly on the same side when it comes to like Security Council votes or the UN or their united hatred of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis, by the way, are Sunni. Iran is Shiite. They do not like each other. It's bad. Over here you got Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, and then there's Pakistan. So Iran is kind of in this really complicated world, right? The Middle East is not particularly well known for its stability, and there's good reason for that. So, historically speaking, Iran is a crossroad. It is a place through which many trade routes moved. The Silk Roads moved through here. People traveled through frequently. If they were trying to get to the Indian subcontinent, they went through Persia. If they were trying to get to Asia, they went through Persia. It is a place that has everything from mountains up here in the north, with widespread snowfall, to deserts here, in kind of the north eastern portion of the country, to beaches down in the south. It is a really varied environment. Now, historically, because Iran, or Persia as it was directly located along all of these trade routes, was vulnerable to invaders. And we see multiple waves of migration and invasion move through Persia historically. And this changes the character of the country, as you might imagine. You have Indo-European migrations down into the Indian subcontinent. You have the Islamic Arab explosion from the Umayyad Caliphate into the Abbasid Caliphate. You have subsequent Central Asian groups like the Turks coming down through this area as well. And as these various groups of people settle and move through and intermarry in Persia, they add layers upon layers to the culture in this area. Now, much of the territory, as you might imagine, especially given the desert, particularly in the northeast, a lot of this territory is not really great for agriculture. It's not impossible to have farms, but you got to do a lot of significant modification of the land, particularly in very, very mountainous regions or in really dry or hot regions. Iran was the second largest oil producer in the Middle East, the largest, of course, being Saudi Arabia, and the fourth largest in the world. That is not true right now because, as you might know, oil has fallen off a cliff. I actually haven't checked the stats on seeing what Iran is doing currently with regards to its oil production, but given that Iran is really suffering during the COVID-19 outbreak right now, I would be deeply surprised to learn that it's continuing to expand its oil industry right now. So Iran is a really interesting place. It is in some places heavily urbanized. Tehran is a massive city, and it is partly industrialized now. About 68% of the population in Iran live in cities, so it's a little bit less industrialized and urbanized than, say, like Mexico, okay? Now, in terms of demographics, let me walk you through this one. So first and foremost, about 67% of the population lives on about 27% of the land. Most of them live close to the Caspian Sea. That's where things are most temperate. What that means is that there's an awful lot of unusable land or very rural areas in Iran, places where population density is very, very low. Iran is not an Arab country. Like, I want you to engrave that upon your gray matter. Iran is Persian. Their languages are massively different. Yes, their script looks similar. That is because Persian uses an Arabic script, but the language is different. In the same sort of way that we use a Latinized alphabet in English, English is not the same thing as German. We use the same alphabet broadly, but they're not the same languages, right? So Farsi uses an Arabic script, but it is not the same language as Arabic. So do not make those mistakes. Persian is actually more closely related to French than it is to Arabic. Like, don't make that mistake. It's really kind of base level. About 89% of the overall population in Iran is Shiite. And I'm going to stop here, first of all, because I'm about to cough a whole lot, and second of all, because I'm about to run out of recording time. I will pick up in a moment.